Let f of x equal negative 3x squared plus 18x minus 20. To express f in vertex form, we're looking for the form a times x minus h squared plus k. With a leading coefficient in front of that x squared, the first thing we do is we factor that number out of the first two terms. So if we do that, we pull our negative 3 out, and we're left with an x squared minus 6x. And then we have our minus 20. Then we complete our square with this inner portion here. And we take this number in front of the x and divide it by 2. And that tells us what number to put inside the parentheses. So we have our negative 3, and then we have x, and then negative 6 divided by 2 is negative 3. And so we have a negative 3 squared. And then we have this number here, so minus 20. And then you always subtract this number squared times this. And so we're subtracting 3 squared times negative 3. And that brings us to, we've got our negative 3 times x minus 3 squared, and then this is minus 20, and then this is minus 9 times negative 3. So that's 27, but it's minus a negative, so it's plus 27. So minus 20 plus 27, that becomes a positive 7. So this is our vertex form. And this tells us our vertex. The vertex for something in this form is at the point hk. So comparing that to this form here, we have h is 3 and k is 7. And so our vertex is at 3, 7. For our x-intercepts, we can just take this equation here, this expression here, and set it equal to 0. And that'll give us our x-intercepts. So let's do that over here. We have our negative 3, x minus 3 squared plus 7 equals 0. So if we subtract 7 from both sides, we have negative 3, x minus 3 squared equals negative 7. And then divide both sides by a negative 3, we have x minus 3 squared equals 7/3. And then we can take the square root. And when we do the square root, we get a plus or minus. So plus or minus the square root of 7/3. And then we add 3 to both sides. We get x equals 3 plus or minus the square root of 7/3. So those are our x-intercepts. We've got the 3 plus or minus square root of 7/3, comma 0. And then for our y-intercept, this is just when we plug 0 into the function. And so if I plug 0 in up here, I've got this first term is 0, and this is 0. We just get negative 20. So we have 0, negative 20. Okay, and now we're ready to graph this function. We'll start with our vertex 3, 7. So we've got 1, 2, 3, and then up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So there's our vertex. And then we can plot our x-intercepts, and we're at 3 plus or minus root 7/3. So let's go ahead and just plug those into our calculator. 3 plus the square root of 7/3, and so about 4.5, and then 3 minus the square root of 7/3. That's going to be about 1.5. So 4.5, 1.5, about. Again, we're not being super precise, right? And our y-intercept is at negative 20. And so this goes down to negative 10 here, so it's way down there. So there's not really much we can do as far as graphing that. But we can still graph our parabola here. And I'm going to go ahead and use my Symmetry Tool to do that. I'll just draw one side and it'll copy it on the other side for me. So there's, oh, that wasn't good. Let's and then it goes down, and whoop. Maybe I'll try and smooth that out. Okay, so something like that. And then we want our domain and range. So the domain for any quadratic is all real numbers, and the range, we just can look at our picture now and see, well, the range is all the possible outputs, our y values. And we go all the way up to 7, and we have everything up to 7 and down forever to negative infinity. So our range is negative infinity up to 7.